everybody for joining today for the second part of this webinar series, digging a little bit deeper into the technology side of a key component of a modern SOC. And what we're going to focus on today, that component being full spectrum visibility across the IT landscape, but not just visibility, contextual, actionable visibility to help security teams understand threats, understand their nature, and most importantly, understand how to respond to them in context. So, it's going to be focused around Microsoft Sentinel, which is kind of Cortex specialty in the SIM space. But also it's a little bit more than a SIM. I like to refer to it as a modern security monitoring and response tool. And it's kind of one of a few that can do the things that we'll talk about today. So just to kick things off, a little bit about myself. I am the director of the managed security solutions practice here at CoreTech. I have 11 years of experience creating and scoping and selling managed security offerings from MDR, SOC as a service, and fully managed security. I have a pretty good understanding of the MSSP market, but also the tool sets and structure of offerings that make up that market with a very focused attitude towards development of our customers' outcomes here at CoreTech. And we typically leverage as much as the Microsoft platform as we can, because we are very firm believers in the platform approach that Microsoft brings to the market, and trying to maximize the value that a lot of our customers have already invested in on the Microsoft side. So just an agenda for what we're going to talk about today, all within the context of how these things are accomplished with Microsoft Sentinel, is solving the problem of data explosion in the modern world, synthesizing that data into actionable security insights, adding layers of context to alerts so that analysts and responders can make quick and effective decisions, and then orchestrating response so that we can be extremely efficient and even take humans out of the loop at times, or put humans in the loop with automation technology to help speed things up and nip any threat in the butt as quickly as possible. And then we'll have a brief demo from a counterpart of mine on the delivery side of our SOC, the guy that runs the North American Security Operations Center here at CoreTech, whose name is Neil Couchard. So he'll hop on just to show a little bit of what I'm talking about in theory, in practice on the screen. And then we'll have a bit of time for Q&A for anybody that wants to put questions in the chat throughout the presentation. We'll address those at the end. So just a very quick snapshot of who CoreTech is at a glance. We are a strategically focused IT systems integrator supporting customers internationally, but with a really big focus on the continental 50 United States. Big presence in the Midwest, but over the last 6 to 7 years, we've expanded nationwide. We are an Azure expert MSP, and also the #1 cloud provider in the Microsoft space with Azure in North America. So a huge breadth and depth of expertise across the Microsoft cloud platform, but also an extreme focus on security. So just about all of the security specializations that you can obtain within the Microsoft ecosystem, which has granted us access to be a member of MISA, the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association, which is really a prime designation for security-focused partners that have proven to Microsoft that they have the capabilities, accreditations, and expertise in the product set to bring the best outcomes out of these solutions to the market. So we're very proud of that. We're also SOC 2 compliant, ISO 27001, and we do a lot of work in the defense industrial space. So we are a CMMC RPO on the path to being level 2 certified in the coming year, so we can deliver very high quality infrastructure and security services to the defense industrial space. So that's who we are, at the highest level. And what we're focusing on today is monetizing detection, investigation, and response with Microsoft Sentinel. And like I said, I like to refer to it as a cloud native, modern security monitoring tool. There's AI built into it, kind of back before AI was the buzzword. It's a very simplified platform, and it allows the aggregation of a multitude of data sources, both legacy and modern and on-premises, as well as hybrid cloud environments, into a actionable tool set. But that is addressing the problem of telemetry overload. Depending on how long your organization's been around, how quickly you've been able to dive into digital transformation, and where your critical applications sit, data is going to be disparate in different places, depending on those factors. And every organization is different, but there needs to be a cohesive strategy around organizing this data. And in today's day and age, there is just more data by the day. Every time that a record is touched, viewed, an email is sent, file is accessed, user account is accessed, somebody logs on. There's a log of this activity, which is extremely important to be able to identify when a log of malicious activity occurs. But with so much potential kind of surface area for attacks across various vulnerable systems, synthesizing that into a centralized platform is a challenge, but we believe that Microsoft Sentinel has solved that for modern workloads, as good or better than anybody. And that's because it was built on a cloud native platform. First and foremost, it understands Azure workloads, to a level that no other vendor can, right? It has native integrations with kind of pre-built correlation and automation before it even hits, your standard traditional SIM correlations, and the modern machine learning jobs, that will juxtapose maybe Azure workloads versus your traditional data center workloads, or even third-party cloud workloads. So what Sentinel does, first and foremost, is tiers data sources into actionable categories, and then is able to scale the performance of analytics against those logs as they come in, both for very clear and easy signature-based triggers, as well as kind of very advanced correlation mechanisms to detect potentially malicious activity, but also to make it very simple, and performant when searching this data for analysts. And so, there's really no bound to the type of data that can be brought in, normalized, but most importantly, made sense of and contextualized from a security perspective. So what you're looking at right here is all of the, quote unquote, out of the box data sources that, on day one of spinning up Sentinel, there's an easy button for bringing this data into the system, and not just getting it, ingested into the SIM, which, is a challenge, with any SIM, and particularly legacy SIMs as you look to cloud-based services. Sentinel makes this extremely easy, but not only do they make it easy to bring in, there are inherent correlation and analytic rules for each and every one of these data sources. So, as you look at this, I'm sure, hopefully, over 90% of the critical systems that you would have in your organization are going to fall somewhere within this kind of eye chart of, data sources. But what this really enables us to do is get insights out of data quickly, because there's a very prescriptive way to bring this in, and then there's out of the box content to correlate this data against, to find risk. Now, that content needs to be fine-tuned, developed. Obviously, every organization is going to have their own policies and custom requirements for detection rules, which is kind of the walk in the crawl, walk, run scale. But what Sentinel enables you to do is get to a baseline set of monitoring and detection very quickly with its out-of-the-box connectors, and deployment guides, which tend to be quite simplified compared to other vendors. So, from that standpoint, like having the data in, having it normalized to a common schema, and having analytics run against it is really foundational. And it's not trivial, but it is the foundational element. The next problem that you really need to overcome is transforming that large data set into actionable security insights. And so those correlation and analytic rules is a big part of that. But also running advanced behavioral analytics against it, machine learning jobs, taking all of your data and being able to understand a picture and uh, I guess model of what's normal, and then being able to detect when something deviates from that model of normalcy, and then understanding why that deviation occurred. It could be just a system anomaly. It could be a malicious system anomaly. And that's where Sentinel has, again, a lot of really good out of the box content, but with the right security professionals that can leverage these tools, you can fine tune this to your organization and then really start to take the output of these alerts and gain a lot of context to them. So, organizations today require a comprehensive platform that delivers kind of a unified visibility to everything going on from an operational set that has the ability to give an analyst or an engineer from the security side a signal that says this looks like it's not normal, or this looks inherently malicious, or in some cases, this is bad, go act now, right? And so being able to paint that context for, hey, you're going to have to dig a little more. We can't tell just by the specific signatures or machine learning, but it is noteworthy to, this is clearly bad. And then enabling, some automation rules to um, basically in real time mitigate something that's clearly bad. And we'll get to that in a couple other slides. But having visibility but also utility to the data is extremely important. And giving your security operations resources the ability to quickly execute whatever needs to be done in the wake of a detection, it is all the more important because time is of the essence in today's day and age, as bad guys and attackers are leveraging their own versions and deployments of AI and machine learning and automation to more quickly get to the information and processes within your network that they need to ultimately execute their goal, which is to figure out a way to get money out of your organization by, holding assets hostage, by stealing data and selling it, or by impersonating users on your network to leverage those identities for nefarious means. So having all of these analytics in a single platform, from multiple functions, but in one pane of glass is extremely important. And, we're going to dive into a little bit more of what that looks like in practice. So being able to visualize everything that could potentially be involved in a malicious or negative security event is something that traditional SIMs and folks that have been in the industry, for many years just didn't used to have the luxury of. You're staring at raw logs and kind of correlation logic that can be pages and pages of very hard to read log formats, and it takes a very experienced and keen eye to understand and quickly get to what's really going on. And while those skills are still going to be important, being able to abstract that into quick visualizations to help enable a quicker determination of what's going on is important. And Sentinel does this very well across multiple data sources. Again, what it can do in terms of visualizing Azure workloads is second to none, but also tying that to what's going on the endpoint, what's going on in the identity space, what's going on premises, showing a timeline of events in a visual way to help an analyst determine that this is actually malicious or suspicious, and I need to go lock that user account because that this login should never have happened under these conditions, just as an example. But even, it's not like Sentinel is impervious to false positives. So being able to visualize something very quickly and understanding, how this worked, and this is just a firewall rule that we allow that triggered this rule set, even though that is standard business activity, to quickly be able to move on to something that could potentially be malicious by quickly identifying false positives is just as important. And then, being able to go back in and fine tune that rule logic, allow an exception, or take out a system from the correlation engine. It becomes very simple when you can visualize it all in one place. Um, so that's what it looks like on the screen. We'll get into that a little bit more in the demo later. But the other piece, as far as providing context and more than just raw logs and signature-based alerting is threat intelligence from both, what you get with Microsoft, as well as the ability to integrate to any other intelligence sources that you may have access to, whether it's through feeds that you pay for, open source accounts that you really trust and have had success with, or developing your own kind of lists, blacklists, whitelists, and threat lists that you can integrate into the already kind of world-class Microsoft Defender threat intelligence, which comes as just a feature that's part and parcel of Sentinel. So the benefit of this is you get the exposure that Microsoft has globally to everybody that's trying to attack a Microsoft workload. They're able to see that when it happens. They're able to hopefully remediate it in real time, but then share that intelligence with the rest of the Microsoft security community inherently into the analytics that I've been talking about. So you have real-time updated analytics from essentially the entire world, the largest source of kind of threat surface that exists via Microsoft's Defender platform that is integrated into your data. So you can benefit from the lessons learned, or the misfortune of somebody getting hit by a 0-day or a new exploit 2 days ago in Germany. That threat intelligence is now codified across the entire Microsoft platform, so that hopefully we can prevent that before it impacts your organization. So this is constantly updated, automatically integrated threat intelligence that, you can fine tune and augment with your own third-party platform. So it's still an open platform that you can bring, if you're in the healthcare industry and you are registered to, the healthcare ISACs that might be made available to you. You can pipe those feeds in concert with the global Defender threat intelligence to just make that even more robust. And integrate it with all of the analytics rules that you write yourself or are coming out of the box. The other really nice thing about Sentinel, from contextualizing data and making it very, I guess, user friendly to work with, is data visualizations and metrics that can be viewed from all levels, and can be made very complex or very simple depending on the user that is operating with that data. So there's dozens and dozens of out of the box gallery workbooks that Microsoft has created for the community to help manage the workload of your security operations center. But it's also very easy to work with Canvas to create your own workbooks, which are essentially reports that you can put on dashboards, to quickly visualize what you need to when you need it. What we found in our security operations center is, you have case metrics, you have overview metrics, but then you have investigation dashboards, which is a very nice feature about the reporting mechanism of Sentinel, is that it's dynamic. So you can have a dashboard that kind of has no filters on it, but is geared at an identity investigation, let's say. And you plug in one identity because you have an alert that indicates this identity. You plug that identity into this dynamic dashboard. It automatically filters all of the events to that identity. So you can see, the same 10 queries that you already have built out, just geared at that one identity. So you're essentially doing the work of writing 10 queries ahead of time so that whenever you have an identity-based investigation, you just plug in the username or the email or the identity key of the particular identity in question, and you already have 10 queries that just populate without having to go write, in SQL or KQL language, each individual query over the course of an investigation just to save you time, but also, displays it back in a very visual manner that you've already preset because, most identity investigations are going to follow the same attack patterns and characteristics. And then you can tweak those as you have lessons learned from particular investigations. So, it gains insight into all of the data across many different queries in one pane of glass. And then you can, either make these very simple for kind of more executive reporting or extremely complex for, very in the weeds investigations. The last problem, that we really have a lot of experience solving with Sentinel is the problem of speed, which is always going to be kind of the thing that we're chasing on the defense side of security, because as we get more automated, orchestrated, integrate AI and very fancy machine learning detection rules into our security mechanisms. The guys on the other side are doing exactly the same, and coming up with new ways to more quickly exploit a particular vulnerability, or even find a vulnerability that people might not be aware of, or pivot from a vulnerability to an identity to a crown jewel system, to be able to start exfiltrating data just in ways that would kind of boggle the mind even 3 years ago before these automated threat techniques were available. So what Sentinel can help us do is hedge against that by being able to automate a response based on certain criteria. So if we have, and I'm picking on identity, so let's go move to endpoint. If we have an endpoint based alert that meets particular criteria, whether it's criticality level, user group or other designations, whether it hits a certain type of threat intelligence, or is just a very straight signature based alert that we know is bad but isn't automatically blocked, at the endpoint level immediately for whatever reason, we can write automation logic that tells the machine to take an action in real time, as it's seen. So it could be killing a process, it could be isolating a workstation, it could be ending identity session and revoking all of the tokens and forcing a password reset. It could be reaching out to a third-party firewall and adding a particular IP to a blacklist. It could be any number of things. It could be a combination of all of those things based on different criteria. And what we typically recommend is, looking at this, in a trailing 3-month lens by, where is your organization being targeted from a technology stack standpoint, from a vulnerability standpoint, and where can we get the most benefit out of developing particular automated response actions for those TTPs, techniques, tactics, and procedures that are targeting your organization. And it could be at a user and identity level, it could be at an endpoint level, it could be at a network level. But once you decide, okay, we know we've seen this type of alert many times, we've hardened our policies, but we're still getting hit, and we just need to be able to quickly do this if it happens at noon on a Monday or midnight on a Sunday. Whether we have a third party SOC involved or our own people, if somebody's on shift or not, we know that if this happens, we need to respond this way every time, or almost every time, depending on certain criteria. Well, what Sentinel allows you to do is very seamlessly kind of integrate to the automation engine that's kind of more open to Azure, but has a security slant on it as you integrate with Sentinel via Logic Apps. So, you can integrate it to anything within Sentinel to basically take any action, I'm sorry, within Azure on any system, right? You can integrate it to Defender to have defenders take action through its EDR APIs, and anything that it has authority to do on a system. And again, you can integrate it to third-party non-Microsoft tools via their API. There are out-of-the-box connectors with pre-built actions that you can take and build into kind of the Canvas style workflow creator. You can also create your own actions if you have a very specific particular use case and you have an API to work with. It is just as easy as developing any sort of API action within a Logic app workflow to develop this kind of logic-based response mechanism, which can be extremely powerful in getting your time to respond down. Now, you can also put a human in the loop of this, right? Hopefully, for most organizations, you have some sort of 24/7 coverage, and you're never going to get fully automated because that's basically conceding or assuming that everything that can possibly affect your organization, when that's just never going to be the case. So we always recommend having a human somewhere in the loop, whether it's to review an action and determine if there's any further action or if the action was relevant. Maybe sometimes you want to roll back that action after something's fully mitigated. But being able to put this within a actionable workflow through the case management function of Sentinel is really important, and that's what these logic apps help you do. And sorry, I thought I had already moved to this slide, looking on my other screen. But, in summary, it helps you build automated and scalable playbooks. This could be, you could target a particular user or the entire user base. You can target a particular set of systems or every entity running in Azure, right? And there are, sample libraries that Microsoft gives you out of the box that really catch-alls that work for a lot of customers that you just have to modify a little bit of logic and can be done in a drag and drop function. Or, you can start with a blank canvas and create your own based on the ideas or requirements that you need, with just a little bit of kind of API developer knowledge mixed with some security engineering. And then you can trigger those playbooks from any alert. You can tie it to multiple alerts. You can have, various bifurcated workflows depending on, alerts fire in succession. You can get very advanced with this very quickly in an easy to manage way. So kind of in summary, before we move to showing a little bit of this in action in the system, talking about the key pillars of modern detection, independent of tool set, right? You want holistic visibility, you want advanced analytics, with machine learning, AI, and traditional signature-based analytics. You want agile and adaptive security resources that are given data at their fingertips to make quick and easy decisions. And you want, a modular orchestrated response capability that, you can develop over time to make your team more effective and more efficient with every individual security alert and make, the time spent per alert as minimal as possible while maximizing the effectiveness of the response. And, Sentinel really provides world-class technology services in all of these areas. You definitely need to understand how to map this to your organization. You need to have a very clear plan for deploying this. You need to understand the entire threat surface of your environment to make sure that it's all brought in and normalized and maximizing the capabilities of all of these wonderful features. But Microsoft makes it as easy as anybody with this cloud native system, especially for kind of modern hybrid cloud workloads, and even more especially when Azure is at the center of your organization running key applications. So that's hopefully a good overview of the functionality of Sentinel. What I would like to do is bring in Neil Couchard from our side to do just a little bit of a deeper kind of demonstration within an actual demo Sentinel instance to show you some of the stuff in action and how it can operate for your specific organization.
Sure thing. Can you hear me okay, Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks
All
for
right.
hopping on, Neil.
Excellent. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and share screen here on my side. Let me know when you see it pop in on your end.
Sentinel console is live.
Excellent. All right. Just settled here. Okay, so what I'm going to walk us through here today is just some of the aspects, dovetailing what Colin led us into here on all of these different signaling and elements that go into creating your SIMS ecosystem, your alerting ecosystem. A lot of key components, a lot of contribution points from those datas. To that all funnel down to an alert, with the spread of the possible alert subjects and topics being just as big as the number of data components you can pull in. It becomes very critical to be able to see everything you need. We in SOC speak here on my side. I'll go back a quick second here. My introduction. I've been in the SOC trenches for about 10 years. I'm the director of cybersecurity operations, our side here, and I'm born and raised in the trenches here. So this page is very near and dear to my heart because we measure things in SOC as terms of how many clicks did I have to do to execute success on something. So starting with our broad view of an incident here, I'm going to pick on the identity perimeter here today. We're looking at what is included in a Microsoft Threat Essentials pack. This is a solution pack that's included inside the Microsoft Sentinel workspace shop, where you can add different types of workbooks, pull in your data connectors and all the other SIM related content. Pretty easy to set up to get this pack stood up. It was very important for us to monitor this environment for active PIM use, admins, devs, people executing, gravitating up their permissions. It's things that can be day in, day out for our workloads, but it's also the most sensitive perimeter to our organization because these roles that they're moving up to inside Azure can obviously be very granular and impactful on what access elements are being done to do it. So that's my example rule here today. What I'm going to do is take us a quick look through some of the alert metadata detail. I'm going to I'm going to show some examples of how we enriched the alerts themselves very easily, very quickly. As well as I'm going to take a look through some of that incident data that Colin talked about, how we get enrichments and pivots in respects to our fewest clicks narrative. Beyond that, I'm going to show a little bit on how to create an automation rule inside of Sentinel straight from this console. And then we'll wrap it up with a quick look at our larger threat perspective with the MITRE attack um, rule mappings and the dashboard that's included with Sentinel. So without further ado, I'll jump right into it. So gave a little context about our alert here. What we're looking at is the full incident view page here. The most important things we're going to have at our disposal that I like to have, but I don't necessarily like to go in right away, is I have a pivot to our logs breakout here. If I am seeing this alert and I know there's a table somewhere or a query that my team is using to work the active investigation I'm in front of, or that just we've been collaborating on inside of the environment, I get a quick breakout to all of the tables contributing data into my Sentinel instance. So based on the data connectors and syslog feeds and everything that we have, I get a quick glance of all of my tables that are actively being contributed to inside of the environment. Also get an example of sets of queries that we can easily pivot into over the environment. Now that I understand what tables I'm in, I now know what application queries based on these categories. So generally, if you're looking for very broad topics, it's in here, but you can also save and bring in your own query history as well. So you get an idea of what we've been poking around in this environment prior on. So with the log and your quick pivot point out of the way, tasks is something that we use personally inside of our SOC. We have our ITSM or ServiceNow managing the tasks in here, but I do like to call it into the demo here because we can add any tasks ad hoc or as a response action, we can define automations inside the alert triggering that will generate some of these tasks that can guide the analysts or introduce requirements on tuning or general triage for the alert. Um, Nice one to have. And then the activity log for the incident, also equally important. I understand everything that took place during the incident here. It was created at 11:45. Our ITSM platform synced with it, gave me some details, let me know what the ticket number inside that platform is, and gave me a link. So anybody, our clients, my analysts, can quickly pivot into that ticket in the platform where we're managing all of our, Grand Central Station of the IT automation there. We can see where Sentinel did change the status, and this was closed as a benign positive with the reasoning from the analyst in there. So told me everything I needed to know how this alert got handled, and I didn't have to leave this initial dashboard. But from an investigation perspective, say we've never experienced anything inside of this alert and we didn't do the work already. What do I care about? What am I paying attention to right away? The details view over here on the left-hand side is, where we typically live. It gives me the workspace name, so I know what environment, is containing the logs. That's very key if you're managing multiple environments and you're scaling rapidly. You will see this workspace name change. You will understand that there are aspects to your organization that may be in that policy management system that you have set up, or maybe not. Or you'll understand those gaps right away. I know what workspace I'm in. Beyond that, you get the other stuff you'd expect every SIM to have, a description of what's going on with it. But what I did want to make note of here is that Microsoft does give strategic direction on what the alert is and what should be done with the alert. Now, this can be customized, obviously, but I do like that they draw back to Microsoft best practices on how to monitor for identity elements in here and where they're drawing their content and training on from. It's all nice, neat, and laid out. For anybody who's looking at this for the first time, it's actually been very easy to train SOC analysts to get them pertinent information. Not going to spend too much time here, but I did want to call out that the alert product name is critical here. If we receive this alert from another platform like Defender itself, a third-party security tool and compliance, we will get a populated link so we can jump into that console. Maybe there's additional integrations that aren't online from the vendor yet. We're waiting for that API to free up so we can automate. But it's here so that I can know exactly what product generated this alert. Being that it's Sentinel, I know that we have a good bearing on all the detection logic leading up to this point. So I'll go ahead and scroll down in here through moving over towards the evidence page. Any questions while I'm here, Colin? I know I'm moving a little fast, but.
No, I think this is great. This is exactly how a practitioner would walk through an alert, and hopefully it's at the right level. It's pretty simple. So thanks.
Yeah. So now that we know what the alert is about and we have a good general sense of where it's coming from, what environments it's impacting, what are the entities involved? Is it a machine? Is it a workstation, a server? I get all that perspective from the entity mappings from the rules here. Now, generally, your solutions will handle all of the entity mappings. We've done very little customization on actually sculpting the entities for these, but you do get the flexibility to bring in additional things like containing the alert, URLs, enrichment pointers, several other items in there that can become helpful. We'll dabble into a little bit of that later, but what I'm concerned with right now is that the rule captured something. It's telling me that these entities are involved. It's telling me which incident workbook is being operated and providing me all the things right now. And what I'm going to pivot to next here, arguably most important for a seasoned analyst, you want to understand exactly what this rule is doing and saying. So we're going to break out into the analytics rule wizard here and get a quick snapshot of that. So the general page is what you'd expect. Those elements I said you could define here, the severity, the MITRE attack mappings, the description that includes the link back to all that documentation. Pretty easy stuff to get through from there. But what I'm concentrated on most here is I want to understand what our rule logic is. Why did this fire? Where is it pulling from? What are the filters leading up to that criteria? So this is KQL on our left here, showing me that it is associated with our audit logs. And all the filters lead us all the way down. What I wanted to draw attention to here is the out-of-box rule for this was a little lacking. It gave us the event and how it did occur in the environment, but it was lacking some context or criteria. So one element that our team did is we extended the analytic rule here. I'll zoom in. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger here, easier to read. But it was pretty straightforward here for us to include the PIM reason into the alert. So that we could see when a user does use the PIM service inside the environment that they're dropping a ticket number or contextual reference as to why it was in there, why they were operating inside of that environment. So these are the two keys that we extended the table so that the alert included that data, so that we had the context right up front. So this was a first pass tune. We're looking at that this rule had at least been tuned once to include some key investigation data. That was the context we decided was important for our environment, so that we could understand that this should or shouldn't be happening. It's one thing that it should be happening if we're expecting it to come from our devs and the locations that they say they're coming from, and that work is scoped. But it's another thing entirely if they weren't, right? If you did not have that ticket supplied or that internal process supporting you here, you'd be kind of wondering. We do get a lot of additional options for unveiling that very quickly. But I did want to just show very quickly, it's one line here. We augmented that rule to add some of the data I'm about to show over it. So moving into the alert itself, we're going to head back here. I'm going to move into the investigation panel, and we're going to hit the evidence tab. I'd like to see the contributing events. Now that I've got a view of the KQL query, it's right above the events. I can basically change or augment this. I can expand the criteria. I can include additional fields that I know are available. If I'm wondering if any of those fields are available, I can look at the table that it's coming from. And that's probably the most powerful point here is I can edit the rule, take this back into the analytic rule, drop it in there once it looks the way we want it to. So you can see we've sculpted the caller. We have the PIM reason cited here, and here's our ticket numbering system. And just this is what our policy reflects. This is what should be inside the environment. There are some other details and critical components, though. We've got a big infrastructure set. Our devs touch a lot of things. How do I know that this is exactly what they did and how it's correlated to their role? So I'm going to back out of this real quick here. We're going to go, okay, we see the PIM reason, we see the elements. We are trusting that this should be at this point. We don't have any reason to think it's malicious, but we want to make sure we understand all of the variables here. Still don't know too much about this IP address on our side here, but we're seeing it all over the place. I'm assuming it's going to have some role in our infrastructure set here, but we're going to move to the investigation tab here to uncover a little bit more of that. Gonna yell at me about my edits here. I'm gonna move to that investigation tab. All right, and what we now have is a graphical layout of the incident and its components at this point. Now, if we had multiple incidents cited, I would be able to see them all here. You would see the shields, the related entities, and we'll be able to go into the timeline, some insights, and some other key components that will help us basically pivot around to our investigation to arrive at that confidence for the verdict. One thing, you can do a quick snapshot back into all that incident data we talked about. If there's fields and data here that you don't have mapped or making use of, you can view them all the raw data here for that. For those that enjoy that kind of thing, I do generally, because there's always stuff hiding in this data that I could probably use for automation. But what I'd like to highlight right away is the immediate action here inside of Sentinel. This is brand new, it's preview, is that if you get multiple events and alerts pulled into a multi-stage incident, that you can remove an unrelated alert out. We don't have to do that very often, but it does when you're shrinking the noise over a bunch of newly introduced log sources or rules. Being able to use this incident to kind of be your record of truth to show any auditors, hey, here's how we handled this incident. All of the actions you take under here show under that activity log I introduced you guys to. So, when you're moving fast through the environment, you have to be able to speak to all those components of everything you did. It's all captured inside of the investigation, which is great. So I don't need to manage anything about the incident itself here, but I could remove any, and prune any noisy alerts contributing up to this. What I'm going to focus on is this IP address we talked about earlier here. I don't know anything about it offhand, but I'm looking at the dashboard here. I'm going to give this a couple of seconds. What it's doing is there's a bunch per entity type. We're looking at the IP address entity here. There's what Colin mentioned earlier, that there's a bunch of predefined enrichment investigations that are available. Now, these are largely dictated by the data connectors that you pull into it. But for this environment, there's only a few key delivery points for log data. We have our identity components, we have our networking components, and then we have M365. So without spoiling anything, there's two networking components, our VPN as well as our firewalls, and then our logging against our Azure infrastructure. But this is basically hitting all the tables that are associated with IPs, and looking to pre-populate some maybe notable pivots. If I'm looking for the least prevalent accounts associated with this IP, say this IP is very noisy, hint it is, I want to see some of these more strategic pivots. I want to see office activity accounts with this IP. I want to see the least prevalent client IPs with DNS. These pre-canned, these can be valuable, and you can add and customize these. So the icon on the left gives you kind of the clue. This is an office-based one, but you can move into all these pivots and add any that you're missing on your own. This can be pretty valuable. Right now, I'm gonna
Yeah, and just to interject there, just like to pause for a second. Anybody
yeah.
that's watching this that has, I guess, experience with a traditional SIM will know how impactful and valuable that is. Instead of having to kind of click through a wall of JSON to see all of these associated things, and then probably pivot out of platform to look at other instances of this IP address and look it up in threat intelligence and all of that. Kind of doing this all in one platform is great, but doing it in such a visual manner, we found is extremely dynamic for one person to be able to quickly understand what's going on and make a determination. So and once you get the hang of the UI, everything that Neil's explaining at a very detailed level really takes just seconds to get to. But this, coming from a world of legacy on-premise SIMs where really all you get is log files and JSON. I mean, when you see this, it's really helpful, and really makes each alert that much more simple to understand what's actually going on. So thanks, Neil. You can continue. I just, that was kind of the main thing
Yeah,
that
sure.
stood out to me the first time I saw Sentinel.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to this main page because it's becoming relevant. I know I got a little too far in the weeds there, but just to describe in the granularity, you can customize those pivot queries based on the entity types and customize those for whatever log sources you're pulling in. So if you have a VPN log set, you can customize a query pointed exactly at that log source. And then you have all those weaponized at your disposal during an investigation. There's a lot of guidance there, and a lot of example templates and detection rules in this space for reference there. Plenty of content to help you get off the ground with that. Now, I wanted to go back to this incident view because I did say it was very important. We did get some top insights about this IP address, the one that's related to our alert here. This is where the activity, this was the that impacted our network, and it classified the remote IPs here. So this is a very well seen IP, almost 2,000 hits here in the last 24 hours alone. That's available to me right away. I know it's a big IP. I can easily do a pivot out to abuse. I see that this is actually our infrastructure set out of our office, our VPN location here. So this alert, widely untuned at this point, we'll have an opportunity to go, okay, well, if this is expected, we'll be able to explore some of that actioning on what we can do with, tuning false positive that's been seen 2,000 times in my environment a day. So before diving into that, though, I did want to mention that it is also pulling to light some of the things that I am like worried about when I go in and I understand what this is now. This is my VPN. Now I want to understand what remote connections are sketchy or what does but this look like against my threat intelligence, and it's giving me a quick view of what's going on with that. um, there's some details on the directioning that can be tuned up here, but beyond that, I get the remote IP address, the threat type, and most importantly, for anybody building their infrastructure and trying to understand, how all my log sources are they represented in the alerts, you get that index snapshot here. This is how many tables are holding IP data for us here, and the indexes here in this case are my VPN logs as well as my Defender network logs as well. So. Uh, M365. So with that in mind, I have a good idea. I'm looking through its botnet activity. I'm not seeing any malware. Botnet, these are going to be investigations that I'll hand off to my other analysts. But I do like seeing the quick snapshot right here. What's the impact? If it was malware, then I'm looking at this, very heavily over the last few hours. Maybe there's deeper connections to be made over some of that data, but I wouldn't have been provided this unless I pivoted and looked at my firewalls. I looked at my VPN logs, and they're right in my lap here with context on how they were brought into my incident. So these can be sculpted and improved upon as well. These are all customizable widgets, workbook items inside the workspace. Um, with that out of the way, now we know that this is a false positive. I've already done the investigation behind this and looked at these IDs. I really want to now, because I understand the context here, these two admins here are performing actions inside of our environment. They're going to be working for the next 4 hours over this. So they've already PIMmed up. They might PIM up to additional roles in the organization here. So the way I'm going to tune out that noise from my SOC temporarily or fully, I've got a few options here. We can sculpt, because we know this IP address here is one of our trusted VPNs. I can set up a suppression rule to say, hey, I don't need to see when people are PIMing and they're coming from the VPN, because they're going to have to follow all of my identity components on the way in here. I have the right visibility here, so I don't have to focus on a particular identity over this. Or I could say, if they're working for the next 8 hours, I'm going to suppress any future alerts until they're done with their change window. Otherwise, I can say I can lower the status. Moving into this create new automation rule straight from the incident, it does build a little bit for me. I moved a little too quick here. It pulls all the contextual data from the entities and gives me all of my conditions in advance here. So these are all the tuning points. I can add some context. I can go back to that workspace and say, hey, if it's this workspace, we don't have to monitor this. This is a brand new dev environment. It's in build state. It's going to be until the end of the month here. There's no production data. There's no production assets. I can set a action rule here to change the severity down to informational. I can write a description as to why include a description as to why this is going to be taking place, and the context for additional analysts if they are reviewing the informationals and lows, which they should be periodically, strategically. I can add a task for any additional tunings, and we can set an expiration for it afterwards. There's the description I was looking for it here. So I can put in, hey, this is expected activity until 8/2, and I can cite their ticket and set the expiration for 8/2. Got to give it a task title. Review this and potentially tune logic. So it's going to save that rule, and it is active. I should be able to review the automations here. when I go look in the logic apps space. But also wanted to show here as well, if you have any predefined playbooks installed in the environment, we have a few. We had some for our Copilot Sentinel investigation. The hook in here, we have IP lookup, some Defender playbooks in here to isolate an endpoint or to reset an Entra ID and password. Marketplace is full of these. They're generally associated with all your solutions that you're bringing in. So
And
that's a high level. I mean,
yeah, and
that's
as we're coming
really
up, Neil, if you can just expand that one more time,
sure.
these are the ones, those playbooks are kind of the relevant ones loaded for this particular event type, right? You can develop your own. There's a library of even more, and as you can see, we kind of take the approach of, we need a human to execute the start of the orchestration playbook, but it does save a ton of time instead of having to pivot to the native system and run all of the commands within Defender to do a certain action, or go to Entra and make who knows how many clicks and keystrokes to lock the account. You run this playbook, it does it then. With that said, depending on the nature of your environments, your appetite for risk, and how quickly or different times of day or a particular type of incident, you could have these run automatically, right? And so we kind of recommend a dual approach to where there are particular alerts that you might want to run a playbook automatically if it meets certain criteria. But the really nice thing is you can have these at your fingertips at all times within the case record to go and run a very bespoke action against it's pre-populating the elements and the entities that are involved in that particular alert. It knows if you want to lock the identity, it's this identity that's already in the alert. If you want to isolate the machine, it's this machine that's indicated in this alert. You click run, it goes and does that, and then you can at least get to a contained state where the immediate risk is mitigated. Then you can go and continue your investigation and go through full remediation. So very, very great run through there, Neil. Really appreciate it. Hopefully it gave the folks watching this a little bit more tangibility to what I was talking about in my presentation, and put a little bit of weight behind the marketing elements that we go over. And this is just scratching the surface, right? There are many deeper capabilities that once you get moving with Sentinel, and we can help customers kind of get to that crawl, walk, run phases of deployment very quickly, and even managing it for you so that our SOC is kind of aligning this to the best practices and keeping pace with all of the new features that come out. So Neil, really do appreciate you taking the time to walk us through there. I don't see any questions in chat. However, if there are particular use cases or food for thought that this demonstration did bring up, feel free to put them in the Q&A, and we can circle back with you following the closure of this webinar, or just reach out to us on our website, on our security page. There's a way to get in contact with us. If you have questions about maybe wanting to run Sentinel in your environment as a POC, if you already have Sentinel and you need some help supporting or deploying certain feature sets, that's what we live, sleep, and breathe here at Cortex. So thanks for everybody for joining. Really hope that this was impactful and increased your understanding of the possibilities from a art of the possible standpoint, but also a little bit granular level into how this works on a very specific alert. So appreciate the time today, and we'll see you on the next one for the last event in the series.